Alright guys, what's up? Welcome back. Today we're going over Spider-Man and we're going to be making a little review on him. I'm going to be going over timeline battle, otherworld battle, and a very little bit of AC, as well as a team that I found that was pretty formidable. He had a brilliant conquest. So I'm going to showcase some success I had and of course some fails I had. So with these first few clips, I had Spider-Man with a greed, and there was an interesting thing that I was told, which I can't really 100% confirm yet, but I swapped two different greeds, and with these first clips, the greed proc had increased damage to combat and blast by 150% over 150% increase to speed and universal. And somebody told me when you swap those two around and you put speed and universal ahead of blast and combat, supposedly you get more efficient with your damage. And I think that's very odd. I mean, you could go and look at the statistic and you can see that both the procs activate at the same time. But I may have seen a little bit of a better performance with Spider-Man later down the line. It could have also been the opponents I was facing. But here, as you can see, I'm able to kill sentries somewhat effectively with a greed, and I think a greed is still very good for him, but there's some downsides to this uniform that I wanted to go over. Like, it's not all going to be perfect. So a couple of downsides is that he loses like 1.5 iframes. The upside is that he carries more damage and more hits. Another downside is that he's less evasive. Like, his fourth skill now, while it has more hits and more damage, it's generally very stationary. So I often found myself getting canceled and not executing it properly, leading me to die very easily. Because with greed, he's still very, very squishy and like easy to kill. But if you're lucky, all it would need is 2 rotations to kill like pretty much whatever kind of opponent you want. But let's just say that Spidey goes up against greed of anything, greed warlocks, greed sentries. He is very susceptible to being one-shot. So later on, I test him with a different CTP, and a CTP that I think is arguably best for him to make him more complete, because you have 2 choices. You can make him squishy but able to kill pretty much anybody, or you can make him defensive and make him more complete against everybody outside of Sentry and like Wolverine. So if you want to last longer against Thanos, Silver Surfer, Adam Warlock, and still potentially be able to one-shot them, you can use a conquest, and you could pretty much get the best out of Spidey. If your stats are very high, you have like enough defense, and the conquest I would definitely recommend to be brilliant, because, you know, Spider-Man, since he's a symbiote, he gets more symbiote support allies like Agent Venom. So he benefits greatly from those defensive supports, and I would honestly recommend that you equip them. I mean, as you can see with the rotations, I just do like 3 cancel 4, and then I do 5 like in between, or I do 4 first and then 5 and then 3 to try to buy me some time. But 3 isn't an iframe, but you know, he carries a good amount of offense. He's very good against the triple meta, but against like any kind of top 5 meta with Colossus, you can only really like use him in very niche moments. So I think his overall value lies in Otherworld Battle and AC, but I think that the two uniforms, Back to Basics and this new one, I think they're very similar. I don't think there's much difference to them other than, like, you know, the amount of hits and like the lack of iframes. But I think he still relies very heavily on the greed proc combining with the accumulation while attacking, and at the same time the opponent not being under debuff removal. Like as you saw there, I got a double kill because when that fourth skill landed is not under debuff removal, when the AI is not under it, it does extraordinary damage. Whereas when the opponent has debuff removal and its countdown, the damage can get a little bit off. Now, he's very good against Warlock, I've seen. He does very sufficient amount of damage. So that's good. And I think that from what I've seen, if Deadpool didn't have a revive artifact, I do think that Spider-Man would be much better than Deadpool, because Deadpool can be used as utility. Spider-Man kind of can't. He needs either a very strong defensive build or a very strong offensive build, so like Greed or Conquest. But he is more efficient than Deadpool in taking out the meta. And like I was saying before, when I put the greed proc of speed and universal on top, I did notice some changes. So later on, we're going to be seeing, and I'm going to let you guys know, we're going to be seeing my Spider-Man with a Conquest, and you'll see that he's better at taking on enemies outside of Sentry. And it's good because Spider-Man generally needs 2 rotations of his fourth skill in order to be more efficient. So, you know, you need him to survive. But, you know, his build does remind me of a tune that benefits with Conquest, because if you gave him like decreased damage received, you know, he has invisibility and he has more HP on this uni as well, he becomes very, very tanky and very, very evasive. So I would recommend that CTP if you're going to be using him for like areas outside of Timeline Battle. Because for Timeline Battle, I want him to kill the meta. I don't want him to kill some of the meta. I need him to kill any meta I want at any given time. So here you'll see, you know what? I'm going to take on a Conquest Wolverine. I have enough damage. He's not under debuff removal. And I webbed him completely. And I locked him. Here I start to showcase Spider-Man with a Mighty Conquest. And I don't typically like to use like crazy supports with him, because I want to see what he's like with raw potential. Like this, right? He took out half of that Sentry, and then he survived Sentry's attacks and then eventually killed him with the second rotation, like I mentioned. And this is a relatively strong team as well. So he tanked a one-shot from Silver Surfer, but couldn't finish the fight. That's the only downside I have, is that he kind of like takes on meta, and you know, against Sentry he can get some kills with Conquest, but not all. And him surviving the next meta and killing the next meta is the issue, because like I said, he needs 2 rotations. On top of that, his fourth skill also takes like a half of a second to start doing damage, which I don't really like. So while it has more hits, it takes like a half a second to actually start hitting, and it has a 7-second cooldown instead of like a 5.5-second cooldown. So in order for me to do anything with Spider-Man here, I have to trigger the debuff removal, because otherwise I would have been dead, and I wouldn't have been able to kill that Thanos. It would have taken me a couple of rotations, but you know, with a mighty conquest without support, you can't really guarantee he's going to live. Now, with a brilliant conquest and support, which I'll showcase later in the video, you're going to see how tanky he could actually be. And it's good because it could expand the amount of teams that are used and expand your roster, which is important, you know. So with Silver Surfer, while Spider-Man has Conquest, I use like 4 and then delay it into the 5. But if you trigger the wall effect, you know, Silver Surfer is going to kill you over time. And, you know, Greed is not the best CTP against Silver Surfer, but Conquest definitely makes him a lot better versus like Silver Surfer, versus like Thanos, and like other toons. But I'm going to keep a Greed on him, but I'm showing you guys how he performs with, like, you know, on manual play with like no supports. So you could see, okay, here's where I could have like essentially line up my skills. Or if I use Wolverine with Spider-Man with somebody with debuff removal in the middle, I could trigger the debuff removal from toons, and I can just get a double kill with Wolverine and have Spider-Man try to kill everybody else. Because as you can see, all he needs is 2 rotations of his 4th skill, followed up by like, you know, 5th skill for some defense and for some follow-up attack. And him being able to tank this is good because, you know, these teams have very high attack despite, you know, Adam, for example, having brilliant conquest. I also tried him with Mighty Authority, and I didn't really like it. And I think it's because I wasn't rocking him with a support of any kind. But, you know, Conquest, I think, is the way to go. I don't think he desperately needs invincibility when he has invisibility. But you may want to give him some more damage with accumulation, right? Well, I mean, I think Clash gives some offense, so you could still rock a Conquest on him. It would probably be preferable. And I did kill some sentries, but for example, I couldn't kill Carl's sentry with a Mighty Conquest. I just could not do it. He was just too defensive. But of course, after a few tries, I tested the theory, and I confirmed the theory that, you know, a Greed Spider-Man can kill this sentry without debuff removal at the right moment, because it's the perfect amount of damage. So that's at least good. And in a few, I'm going to take him into Otherworld battle. And right now, you're just pretty much about to see like my Conquest, like 2 Conquest Wolvies battling it out, you know. But the key that what I do is that I trigger debuff removal as fast as I can. And Spider-Man did pretty decent against this Conquest Wolverine. He almost got him to 1%, which is pretty impressive for a speed with Greed against a full-blown combat counter. But look how many rotations I have to do. Because that's the only thing I don't like about Conquest, is that against Wolverine and against sentries, sometimes I need to do multiple rotations, but, you know, Wolverine does have the defense and just enough debuff removal to take him on. So now I'm taking Spider-Man into Otherworld battle, and I'm putting Spider-Man with Agent Venom, Colossus, and various other supports. With Greed, you could see that he's going to survive just enough to one-shot various opponents at the same time from like pretty decent distance. The problem I have is that sometimes Spider-Man's fourth skill can be easy to avoid. Like before, Spider-Man's fourth skill was unavoidable. Now you could actually run away from Spidey's fourth skill. Now, obviously, with Otherworld Battle being only autoplay, you're not going to see that. You'll see my tactics against a Brilliant Conquest Spidey over time, but in the meantime, you can see him take down all kinds of opponents, from Thanos to Hulk to characters with even like immortality like Ghost Rider or Carnage. And a key that I use is that I put Spider-Man towards the end. I don't put him in the beginning, because in the beginning he'll kill maybe like one meta, whereas when he's last, he has the potential to sweep the board like so. And with this, I got a defeat because the other Spider-Man was stronger than my own, so he had killed my Spider-Man beforehand, making him pretty much sweep the board. And I've done it already a couple of times, so I think like this is where he shines mostly, as he can take on a lot of different people at the same time. But his weaknesses are combats, so combats like Apocalypse can actually cancel his fourth skill in battle. So even though he could potentially sweep the board if he's fast enough, and he can kill the likes of Doctor Doom and Apocalypse, he can also be more susceptible to his fourth being cancelled. I think Colossus overall is still probably the best support I could use, but if Silver Surfer wasn't banned this week, I would have probably rocked Agent Venom and Colossus together. But since Spider-Man has agreed, it doesn't really make much of a difference, unfortunately. But if your Spidey had Conquest, it could definitely make a huge difference. I don't think he actually needs debuff removal, because he gets it on his fourth skill, and he gets it every 7 seconds, and it lasts for 5 seconds. So it's pretty decent, but I'm using Invisible Woman because I want my other characters to perform at a greater level. Like, I want Ghost Rider to stay in the match and not get stun locked. But as you can see, I've taken on the previous Spider-Man. I've taken on the current Spider-Man. And, Mayan actually got the win here. So, I think that he is pretty meta. I would rank him probably around top 8. I think he's better than Jean overall now, as he can definitely kill the meta much more efficiently, and his damage is definitely there. It makes me debate whether Spider-Man at his peak is better than Quicksilver at his peak, and I'm not really sure. I think it's very, very close. I think Quicksilver has one rotation that could kill a majority of the meta, but Quicksilver's evasion is just, it's heavily reliant, and, a really easy counter to Quicksilver is ignore dodge. Whereas Spider-Man having invisibility and supports that give him decreased damage received, I think he's overall arguably a little better. I mean, I've seen him survive Awakened skills. I've seen him go up against debuff tunes. I've seen him go up against meta that it's opposite of his class, and he does relatively well. And inside of the top 5 meta, he can kill some of them. And when I say that, I mean with like anybody outside like Wolverine and Sentry, he could kill most of them. But with a certain build, he can kill all of them, but doesn't survive in the time period that you want. But overall, he's relatively decent. He holds his own in a 1v1, and he does pretty well in a clustered group where everybody's kind of like off their immortality and off their skills. So here I took him into a quick AC match, and he didn't really do awfully well despite having 2 meta alongside him. And I just compared it with a Greed and with a Conquest, and The difference was that, you know, Spider-Man lasted a little longer with Conquest. The problem is, for some reason, is that Spider-Man doesn't prioritize his fourth skill first. I think he was prioritizing his first skill, and I have no idea why. Yeah, I took on like a Thanos and a Jean Grey, and those two have ignore iframes that they start off with right off the bat. So Spider-Man, you know, was getting himself into a bad situation there. And here he just survived like a few seconds longer. I know I kind of wanted to showcase that, and I'm making like kind of a big deal out of it, but it allows my other characters to more efficiently kill the opponent. So it buys them some time. That at least is pretty good for AC. But I've still yet to try him out there. So I will in the future. But now I want to fight a brilliant Conquest Spider-Man. That's where the challenge is at. Now the challenge isn't like meta breaking, but I was very, very impressed with his Silver Surfer. He had a very, very strong Silver Surfer, and could be that he has a lot of HP, that Agent Venom had a CTP of Liberation on him, so they gave him some extra HP on top of some of the team-up bonuses, like I'm guessing that Agent Venom and Spider-Man have, and Spider-Man and Silver Surfer have. So this team was like somewhat formidable. Of course, like my Sentry like knocks that out of the park, but I also used Invisible Woman's 6th skill on Spider-Man, which is a weakness to him, definitely. Then, you know, of course, Wolverine is definitely a counter to Spider-Man, but I used him primarily against Surfer, and I used my Spider-Man to kill his Spider-Man, because my greed Spider-Man can kill anybody he wants. It's just sometimes he doesn't get the one shot off right away. So that's his only downside. So I don't have any supports on my teams, or they're kind of like sort of supports. So, you know, this Spider-Man definitely has like a way bigger advantage to mine. I have to just be very careful. But like I was saying earlier, I could run away from his fourth, or I could cancel it. So there are some weaknesses in this uniform despite the damage. And like, I think that this uniform is not like a must buy if you don't really want to rock Spider-Man like that. But if you wanted to perform better in Otherworld Battle and probably AC, then yeah, you could definitely use this uniform, and you can benefit from the perks that it gets, like getting an extra support and extra damage and things like that. Here I'm going to try to kill him with Warlock and Doctor Doom, which I think is definitely possible. And yeah, as you can see, like that Surfer is taking a beating, but it's taking me more rotations than I initially thought. Doom's just got to be careful, and he's got to keep hitting that counter, otherwise he's going to die. But yeah, with a proc, I can definitely kill Spider-Man, even with a Conquest. You know, Agent Venom. Agent Venom, I haven't seen at tier 4 yet, but people aren't rocking the right CTP, so I couldn't really find a formidable Agent Venom. But in this setup, he is a formidable support. He does make the whole team a lot stronger. But you're going to see here that Apocalypse is actually a pretty decent counter to Spider-Man, even at tier 3, and he's using his 2nd skill to completely interrupt him, which is, it was very surprising to me, and it gave Apocalypse a very, very cool showcase, which you're going to see. He's going to throw that damn meteor at Agent Venom. Poor Agent Venom, man. I feel bad for the guy. That was pretty cool. I just got Surfer to tier 4, so his damage is definitely like there. Like his 5th skill alone with his 3rd skill is freaking really strong. I could even take on that Spidey with Hulk, But Spider-Man actually held his own, and he did really well against Hulk, and it caught me by surprise. Like, he survived this entire skill. It's pretty impressive. It's impressive defense when a combat can't one-shot you. So, I think the HP on this guy was like double mine. I have like 50% HP. He has like 100% HP. So, this Spider-Man was definitely on the formidable side. And so is this Surfer. And I'm going to use like all of my skills to just take him out at the nick of time. Crazy defense, but regardless, this is my last team. I used 6 teams to combat this brilliant conquest setup, I would call it. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. There's going to be more guides coming before the mid-month, which will probably feature Null and maybe Carnage. So these will be very important reviews that I'll go over. I'll be posting guides regarding the top 5 and how to use them. Take care, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.